And it's time for Lefties Losing It, and Donald Trump was giving a speech in Michigan to mark the first 100 days of his second term when a lefty losing it last decided to make a monumental fool of herself. Now, watch here as the president tries to figure out whether this lefty is male or female.
What's the problem over there? What's the problem? Is that a radical left lunatic? He's just a child. All right, get him out. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, ma'am. I thought it was a guy. Thank you. And she now has to go home to a mother who's a big Trump fan. Her mother's watching. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said he, and it's a she. I'm sorry.
Oh yes, it can be hard to work out whether some of these radical left lunatic non-binary folk are male or female. And talking about LGBTQIA++ community, here is a trans woman, also known as a man identifying as a woman, who fled to the UK, but it hasn't worked out well.
I decided to come to the United Kingdom, which has been a huge mistake, I must say. Not only the April 16th law that passed invalidating transferable genders, tensions shift very quickly when laws change. And found myself not welcome in places I was welcome just on my initial arrival here very quickly. It's been quite terrifying.
Now, sticking to the UK, you may have missed this, but there was a little miracle. The leftist British PM Keir Starmer, who not long ago claimed that some women have penises, well, he somehow, at the tender age of 62, worked out what a woman is. Bless.
Do you believe a trans woman is a woman?
Look, I think the Supreme Court has answered that question.
So you don't believe a trans woman is a woman?
Look, a woman is an adult female, and the Court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say.
Now, I have missed historically illiterate hysteric Joy Reid since she was sacked by MSNBC, but thankfully she's still producing content like this, where she claims voting for Republicans will lead to civilizational death. And the example she uses couldn't be more wrong.
If you take that away and try to distill us just down to white folks, we'll be like Europe, an aging, slowly dying former empire. The Roman Empire didn't survive because it didn't have enough strength in its diversity. It suppressed its diversity and it died. If the U.S. wants to be the Roman Empire, keep voting the way you're voting, y'all.
You know, Joy's mad fever dreams about Trump and white supremacy seem to impact her entire worldview, but you can't change history, Joy. Well before the fall of the Roman Empire, the emperor granted full Roman citizenship to all free men within the empire, changing the entire scope of citizenship to be far more inclusive. Facts are our friends. Now, let's check in with former First Lady Michelle Obama, who must be among the unhappiest women in America. She is full of self-pity. She's full of disdain for the country that gave her so much and full of fears that are frankly hysterical.
In this current climate for me, it's, what's happening to immigrants. So it's not the fear for myself anymore. I drive around in a 4-car motorcade with a police escort. I'm Michelle Obama. I do still worry about my daughters in the world, even though they are somewhat recognizable. So my fears are for what I know is happening out there in streets all over the city. And now that we have leadership that is sort of indiscriminately determining who belongs and who doesn't.
Indiscriminately? Really, Michelle? You have to be in the country illegally. You have to have broken the law to be in the country illegally to be a candidate for deportation. Kind of an important point, but miserable Michelle wasn't done yet. She really does seem like the unhappiest person in America, even with the 4-car motorcade.
And knowing that there's so much bias and so much racism and so much ignorance that fuels those kind of choices, I worry for people of color all over this country. And I don't know that we will have the advocates to protect everybody. And that that frightens me. It keeps me up at night, and I know that I see that when I'm driving around LA. I'm just looking in the faces of folks who could be victim, and I'm wondering, how are you feeling? How do you feel standing on the bus stop? How do you feel comfortable going to work, going to school, when you know that there could be people out here judging you and who could upend your life in a second?
Incredible stuff. Funnily enough, Michelle wasn't too worried when her husband, the man who got the nickname Deporter-in-Chief, she wasn't too worried when he was in the White House and responsible for deporting millions. That didn't keep her up at night. Let's give Michelle a little reminder.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country. So that's why we need to start by giving agencies charged with border security new technology, new facilities, and more people to stop, process, and deport illegal immigrants.
That's how Barack used to campaign, and when he was in office, he was deporting millions. He even talked about targeting businesses that gave employment to illegal immigrants. I don't think this kept Michelle up at night either.
We all agree on the need to better secure the border and to punish employers who choose to hire illegal immigrants. We are a generous and welcoming people here in the United States, but those who enter the country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law, and they are showing disregard for those who are following the law.
Joining me now is comedian and host of Primetime with Alex Stein on Blaze TV. Alex, Michelle was in the White House during a period where Barack got known as the Deporter-in-Chief. Did she ever speak out about that at the time? Because Trump's doing the same thing and it's keeping the poor woman up at night.
You know, honestly, I don't think Trump is deporting them fast enough. I really do believe that, even though I know he's doing a great job on stopping the illegal border crossers right now. But listen, let's look at Michelle Obama and Rita. You know, I've been trying to kind of pinpoint the similarities to Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith. You know, if you look at it now, she's doing a podcast. Jada Pinkett Smith was doing a podcast. It just seems like this couple that, you know, gave us the impression that they were very strong, they're on thin ice. So I just, you know, the hypocrisy of the Obamas, considering they say climate change is one of our biggest threats, that they live in Martha's Vineyard. So this is just another example of probably some of the most hypocritical people on planet Earth.
But also some of the unhappiest, it seems. Michelle's podcast is just a massive whinge fest. She's just lives a fairly charmed existence, you would think. She's got more money than she could ever need. She's got the 4-car motorcade she mentioned there. But she just whines endlessly on that podcast and all these interviews. She's almost overtaken Meghan Markle and Prince Harry as the most self-delighted, overprivileged, miserable people in the country.
Well, and that's a tough award to win because nobody can beat Meghan Markle really when it comes to that. But, you know, I mean, just the sad reality, though, when it comes to Michelle Obama is that you're right, is that she's unhappy. She's doing whatever she can to stay relevant. But the people want her to run. She's not going to run. So she's kind of stuck in this in-between zone of what does she want to do? What is going to be her identity other than being, you know, the former first lady? So she's kind of grasping at straws. She's not as talented as people probably thought. And nobody's listening to her podcast. There's trouble at home. So the future for Michelle Obama, I imagine it is going to be a tough road ahead. And I don't think we're ever going to get actually any transparency. I think that they could totally be divorced, Rita, and they would never publicly state it, at least not for a while. They'll just live. One will be in Hawaii and one will be in Martha's Vineyard because they're such phonies. I don't even think they would admit that they can't even make the relationship work.
I tell you, I reckon this podcast has been an enormous mistake. It's not only exposed how unpopular she is, because she's always had this image of being enormously popular, and that's been part of her appeal for the Democrats. She's always talked about as a future presidential candidate. But the numbers for this podcast are so woeful. But beyond that, she's become a figure of mockery because everything that seems to go viral from the podcast is material that sees her as the butt of jokes because she just whines and whines and whines. She never has anything happy to say and very little that's interesting. That's the other thing, that she's not a very compelling character. Now, I want to ask you about the tariff war. There were reports that Amazon was going to list the tariff on items on its website.
It was reported this morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect, crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
But Alex, Amazon is denying these reports. They're denying that they plan to display prices showing the tariffs' impact on Amazon.com. I don't know if this has anything to do with a 2% drop in Amazon's share price after the White House called the reports of this pricing plan a hostile and political act. What do you make of this? Did they do a U-turn on this policy when they saw the backlash, or was it always fake news?
Well, I hope it was always fake news, because after Jeff Bezos' disaster, sending Lauren Sanchez to space, I mean, he just wasted all of his money basically sending, let's be real, a bunch of untalented, well, I guess Katy Perry has a little bit of talent, but not astronauts. None of those women were astronauts. He sent them all into space. So I think that was actually not received as well as they expected. And a lot of people thought that was a waste. So I think for their public relations, it cannot add this tariff. MAGA's already upset that they sent Katy Perry up there. He needs to try to appease the American people. And these tariffs are unfortunate, but it's just a necessary evil at this point.
Well, he has done a great deal of harm to the credibility and the image of those women. Katy Perry is now being mocked widely. She's having trouble moving tickets for a concert, and I'm seeing clips of her concert tour being mocked mercilessly. Gayle King is also being ridiculed online. It's one of the biggest PR disasters in recent years, that little space expedition.
Well, and it's not about the women. I think people want women to go into space, but it was just the women that they chose. I mean, Lauren Sanchez, because she's dating Jeff Bezos, she gets to be one of the women that goes up there. And it's just, this is what we get. There's people that are starving out there. The middle class is literally shrinking every single second. And the billionaire elites are more interested in sending their girlfriends up to space than actually helping the American people. So I'm happy that Elon Musk is using his billionaire power to give us some more government transparency. Some of these guys need to use their power for good and not wasting, a rocket fuel to send these women into space. Let's be real, Katy Perry doesn't know what to do in space. What are they testing? Ozempic and zero-G, silicone and zero-G gravity? They don't need this. It's a waste, Rita.
Alex.
You know this.
Well, if they actually did those tests, it could have been a worthwhile exercise. Alex Stein, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Rita.